Sorry, Mom. We just can't make it tomorrow night. My son's voice on the phone had that familiar guilty tone I'd heard so many times before. I gripped the receiver a little tighter, staring at the birthday cake recipe I'd planned to bake for myself. Tomorrow, I'd turned 65 and it looked like I'd be celebrating alone. This travel deal came up last minute, Eric explained, and I could hear the bustle of an airport behind him. A trip to Europe we just couldn't pass up. You understand, right? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Of course, I understand. Europe is beautiful this time of year. He sighed with relief. You're the best. Mom, we'll make it up to you when we get back. Maybe take you to that Italian place you love. I didn't tell him I'd already made reservations there for the three of us. Instead, I steadied my voice. That sounds nice. Have a wonderful trip. Be safe. He told me he loved me, and then handed the phone to Vanessa. Martha, darling. My daughter-in-law's cheerful voice bubbled through the line. So sorry about your birthday dinner. Terrible timing with this trip. But you always say experiences matter more than things, right? The irony made me wince. I'd said that once to encourage them to spend money wisely, not to justify skipping my birthday. Absolutely, I agreed politely. When I asked where they were going, she gushed. Paris, then the French Riviera, and finally Rome. And guess what? Eric scored us an upgrade to first class. My eyebrows shot up. On their modest incomes, first class seemed impossible. But all I managed to say was, "That's wonderful. How lucky," she laughed. We really lucked out. Anyway, they're boarding now. Happy birthday in advance. 64 is going to be amazing. 65, I corrected softly, but she'd already hung up. I set the phone down and looked around my neat little kitchen. The evening sun stretched long shadows across the counters and on the fridge. Tomorrow's date was circled in red: birthday dinner with Eric and Vanessa. 7 p.m. I should have known better than to get my hopes up. They'd canceled on me before, but this one hurt more. Maybe because it was the first milestone birthday since Harold died 5 years ago, or maybe because I had been so excited to share my news. I'd finally decided to sell the house and move to the coastal retirement community I'd been dreaming about. With a sigh, I picked up the phone and called the restaurant. Hello, Bellanata. How may I help you? I need to change a reservation for tomorrow night. Campbell, party of 3. Of course, Mrs. Campbell. What would you like to change? I hesitated. Could you make it for 1 instead of 3? A pause. Certainly. I almost hung up, but then added, and please, no birthday dessert with a candle. I'd rather not. The next evening, I dressed carefully in the blue dress I'd bought for the occasion, did my makeup with extra care, and drove myself to the restaurant. The Mater D greeted me warmly, but couldn't quite hide the flicker of pity in his eyes as he led me to a table now set for 1. Happy birthday, Mrs. Campbell, he said kindly. I smiled, placing my purse on the empty chair beside me. Around me, the room was alive with chatter and laughter, families celebrating, couples leaning close, friends raising glasses. Everyone had someone with them. Everyone but me. My phone buzzed with birthday wishes from neighbors and distant relatives on social media, but nothing from Eric or Vanessa. They were probably mid-air by now, sipping champagne in first class. I ordered a glass of Pinot Noir and the salmon I'd been craving. When the waiter asked if I was expecting anyone else, I shook my head. Watching as he cleared away the extra place settings, one by one each, removal a small reminder of the empty space at my table. As I sipped my wine, I couldn't stop wondering how Eric and Vanessa could possibly afford first-class tickets to Europe. Just 3 months ago, Eric had called asking if I could loan them $3,000 for car repairs. It wasn't the first time either. Over the past 2 years, I'd given them almost $20,000 for one emergency or another. Each time, Eric promised it was temporary. Just until my bonus comes in, Mom, he'd say, or, we'll pay you back as soon as Vanessa's yoga studio starts making money. The money never came back. Still, I always said yes. What mother wouldn't help her only child if she could? Thanks to my years teaching high school and Harold's careful savings, I was comfortable, not rich, but able to help. But first-class flights to Europe, luxury hotels, something didn't add up. When the waiter set down my salmon, beautiful and steaming, I stared at the empty chairs across from me. A new, firmer feeling rose in my chest. This birthday might be lonely, but it would be the last time I let myself feel like an afterthought or worse, like an ATM instead of a mother. Tomorrow, I promised myself as I cut into the fish, I'd start asking questions. It was time to understand exactly how Eric was funding this lifestyle. It was also time to set some long overdue boundaries. I had no idea then, but my 65th birthday wasn't just another year, it was the beginning of a reckoning that would change my relationship with my son forever. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. Instead of replaying last night's disappointment, I made myself a proper breakfast, poached eggs on toast, the way Harold used to make them, and poured a strong cup of coffee. I sat at my computer, ready to take the first steps. My inbox held a few belated birthday notes, one from my sister in Arizona, another from my best friend Grace, traveling in New Zealand. Sweet, but nothing from Eric or Vanessa. Not that I expected much while they were jetting to Europe, but the silence still stung. On a whim, I opened Facebook. I rarely used it, but I liked to check in on old students and see photos of family. I typed Eric's name in the search bar, clicked his profile, and froze mid-sip of coffee. There it was, a photo posted 7 hours earlier. Eric and Vanessa reclining in wide, cushioned seats with champagne flutes in hand. The caption read, "First class, all the way to Paris, living the dream, blessed." This wasn't just first class. From the lie-flat seats, noise-canceling headphones, and multi-course meals served on china, it was clear they were flying in the most expensive top-tier international first class, tickets that cost thousands each. Scrolling down, another post appeared, uploaded just 4 hours ago. The Eiffel Tower sparkling against the night sky. The caption read, "Made it to Paris, checking into the Ritz before exploring the City of Lights. Bucket list." My hands shook as I set my coffee cup down. Just 3 weeks ago, Eric had called, nearly in tears, saying they couldn't cover rent. I'd wired him $1,800 without hesitation. And now the Ritz. I clicked over to Vanessa's page. She posted constantly, always staging their life to look glamorous. Her latest post made my stomach twist. "Finally, using Martha's birthday week to take the European vacation we've been planning. Sorry, we'll miss the cake, but we're celebrating you from Paris. No regrets, treat yourself." My birthday week, as if my birthday were the excuse for their luxury getaway, instead of the thing they'd chosen to abandon. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm washing over me. This wasn't just carelessness. It felt intentional, calculated, with new resolve. I did something I'd never done before. I logged into my online banking. Harold had always handled our money, and even after he passed, I'd stuck to old habits, glancing at paper statements, rarely checking online. A year ago, Eric had encouraged me to set up online access, insisting he be added as an authorized user in case of emergencies. When the dashboard loaded, my balances looked fine at first glance, but something nudged me to dig deeper. I clicked into the recent transactions, and my heart nearly stopped. When I looked through my account history, my stomach dropped. In the past 3 months alone, there were multiple transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Some were labeled Eric's support or family help, but others had no description at all. Altogether, they added up to more than $30,000, far beyond the small loans I had knowingly given. My chest tightened as I clicked into my investment account, the nest egg Harold had built with such care. Nearly $80,000 was missing since my last quarterly statement. My hands shook as I picked up the phone and called Grace, my best friend and former financial advisor. "Happy birthday again, Martha." She greeted me brightly from New Zealand, her voice warm despite the time difference. "Grace," I said, my tone surprisingly steady, "I need your help. I think Eric has been taking money from my accounts without my permission." The silence on the line was deafening. Finally, Grace sighed. "Martha, I've been worried about this for a while. Their lifestyle, it's never made sense." "You suspected?" I asked, sharper than I meant to. "I had concerns," she admitted gently, "but you always defended them. I didn't want to push too far." "Well, now I need you to push," I said firmly. "Walk me through what to do." For the next hour, she guided me step by step through my finances. We uncovered dozens of unauthorized transfers stretching back a year and a half. Credit cards opened in my name that I had never seen. Worst of all, mortgage refinance paperwork with Eric listed as the primary borrower, documents I had no memory of signing. "This looks like forgery," Grace said gravely. "Or, at best, he tricked you into signing without telling you what it really was." I remembered Thanksgiving, Eric placing papers in front of me, saying they were routine updates to my will and power of attorney. I had signed, not even glancing twice, because he was my only child. My trust had been absolute. "What do I do now?" I asked. Oddly, My fear had settled into a calm, focused determination. First, protect what's left, Grace instructed. Change every password. Remove Eric's access. Call the banks, the fraud department, your lawyer, and after that, that depends, she said carefully. If you want, this could become a criminal case. I glanced at my computer screen. Vanessa's smiling face stared back at me in front of the Eiffel Tower. Hashtags claiming they were celebrating my birthday from Paris. My voice was cold but steady. What I want is for them to understand what they've done, not just to my finances but to my trust. For 3 hours straight, I made calls. I locked down my bank and investment accounts, froze the credit cards, placed fraud alerts, revoked every authorization. Finally, I called Henry Matthews, my attorney and longtime family friend. Martha, he answered warmly. I was just about to call with birthday wishes. How are you? I've been better, I replied tightly. I need your help. How quickly can you freeze a home equity line of credit? By late afternoon, I had secured my accounts. Henry uncovered something even worse. Just 2 weeks ago, Eric had opened a $50,000 home equity line against my house. Most of it was already gone. As I sat at my kitchen table, drained but strangely clear-headed, another Facebook notification appeared. Vanessa again, dinner reservations inside the Eiffel Tower, champagne glasses clinking. Her perfectly manicured hand passing a distinctive platinum credit card to the waiter. My platinum card, the one Eric had secretly opened in my name 6 months earlier. I no longer hesitated. With steady hands, I dialed the international number for the Ritz Paris. Bonjour, Ritz Paris, came a polished voice. Yes, hello, I replied calmly. I need to report a fraudulent credit card being used by 2 of your guests. The line was quiet for a beat before transferring. Then, in careful, accented English, the hotel's financial manager spoke. Madame Campbell, I understand your concern, but we must follow certain protocols in these situations. If you're claiming the card is being used fraudulently, we'll need to verify your identity before we can act, the Ritz manager explained. Of course, I said, sitting straighter in my chair. I have everything you need. For the next 15 minutes, I rattled off details: my full name, address, the card number, security code. Even security questions Harold and I had set up years ago. With every answer, a strange mix of anger and satisfaction grew inside me. This wasn't just about dollars anymore. This was about taking back control. Thank you for your patience, Madame Campbell, the manager finally said. We can confirm you are indeed the card. The guests in question, Monsieur and Madame Campbell, checked in earlier today for a 5-night stay in one of our deluxe suites. I nearly choked. A deluxe suite at the Ritz Paris 5 nights would cost more than my entire month's expenses back home. I understand they also have dinner reservations at LA Jules Verne tonight, I asked, my voice steady. Yes, Madame, along with spa services tomorrow morning and a private tour of the Louvre. My grip on the phone tightened. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. Here's what I need you to do, I said, slipping into the firm, no-nonsense tone I'd once used to set unruly teenagers straight. I am reporting this card as stolen. Cancel it immediately. Decline all further charges. Certainly, Madame. And their current accommodations. I paused, considering. A part of me wanted them tossed out on the street tonight, but no, something more measured would sting far worse. Allow them to return from dinner, I instructed. Then, inform them their payment method has failed. Suspend all privileges room service, spa, concierge, till they provide a valid card in their own names. As you wish, Madame. When I hung up, I wasn't finished. I spent the next hour on the phone with American Express, Visa, and MasterCard, reporting every fraudulent account. Each line of credit slammed shut, one by one. Finally, I called the airline. They were tougher, but, with the right documents and enough persistence, I convinced them to cancel Eric and Vanessa's return tickets. Their champagne-soaked trip would end the same way it began, on borrowed time. By early evening, I had dismantled their entire European fantasy. The only funds left at their disposal were whatever scraps they had in their own names, which, knowing their finances, wasn't much. With one last call, I set up a credit monitoring service to alert me to any new accounts attempted under my name. Then, at last, I poured a glass of wine and waited. It was after midnight when my phone rang. Eric's name flashed across the screen: an international call from Paris. I let it buzz 4 times, steadying my breath, then answered. Hello, Mom. His voice carried a nervous edge I'd never heard before. There's some kind of problem with the hotel. They're saying the card was cancelled. There must be some mistake. I took a slow sip of wine. No mistake, Eric. I cancelled it. A pause. Then, you. What? Why would you do that? Because it's my credit card, I said evenly. One I never applied for or authorized. Mom, I can explain. His voice cracked with desperation. We were going to surprise you with this trip. That's why we couldn't make your birthday dinner. We were going to bring you back something amazing from Paris. I almost laughed at the clumsy lie. Interesting, I replied coolly, because, according to Vanessa's Facebook posts, this trip was planned around my birthday week as an excuse to spoil yourselves. Not exactly a surprise for me, was it? Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear muffled voices, Eric whispering to Vanessa, scrambling for their next excuse. Look, Mom, he tried again, his voice low and urgent. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. We can sort this out when we get home. But right now we're in a foreign country, and at the Ritz Paris. I cut him off. In a deluxe suite that costs more than 2,000 euros a night, charged to a credit card in my name that I never approved. Just like the first-class airfare, just like the dinner at the Eiffel Tower tonight, just like the spa treatment scheduled for tomorrow. Mom, no, Eric, I said firmly. I've spent the entire day uncovering how you've been paying for this lifestyle, the unauthorized transfers from my accounts, the credit cards opened in my name, even the home equity line of credit on my house. My voice stayed steady, though a hot tear slid down my cheek, all while I sat alone at my birthday dinner last night. That's when Vanessa jumped in, her voice sharp. Martha, you're overreacting. Eric was just helping manage your finances since you're getting older. Everything was done for your benefit. My benefit. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Tell me, Vanessa, how does draining my retirement account benefit me? How does maxing out credit cards in my name help me? Please enlighten me. We were going to pay it all back, she insisted, her usual polished tone cracking. Eric's due for a promotion, and my yoga studio is about to turn the corner. The same promotion you've been waiting on for 3 years. The same yoga studio that's been about to turn the corner since it opened. I shook my head, though they couldn't see it. No more lies. Not tonight. Eric came back on the line, his voice edged with panic. Mom, please, we're stranded here. The hotel says we have to provide another card by morning, or check out. All our cards are being declined. We don't have enough cash for another hotel, let alone to get home. That sounds difficult, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. Maybe this is the perfect chance to practice the financial responsibility you've avoided for so long. What's that supposed to mean? His voice rose, carrying that entitled anger I'd glimpsed before but always excused. It means I've spent 20 years bailing you out, Eric. Not anymore. So you're just going to leave us stranded in Paris? Your own son, my own son who stole from me, I corrected quietly. My own son who forged my signature, drained my accounts, and skipped my birthday dinner to fly first class on my dime. Mom, you can't do this, Vanessa cut in, her voice shrill. We're your family. Yes, I whispered, my voice finally breaking. And that's why this betrayal hurts so deeply. We'll be completely stranded, Eric said, switching to that guilt-trip tone he'd used so effectively for years. Is that what you want for your only child? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, pushing past decades of instinct to rescue him. What I want is for my only child to understand that actions have consequences. What I want is for both of you to live with the choices you made. What I want is for you to find your way home without my money for once. And how exactly are we supposed to do that? Vanessa snapped. You're both smart, capable adults, I said evenly. If you could pull off an elaborate financial fraud against your own mother, I'm sure you can figure out how to book economy flights home. With that, I ended the call and shut off my phone. My hands were trembling, but not from fear this time. It was relief. The relief of finally speaking my truth after years of enabling them. Outside my kitchen window, the first light of dawn spilled across the sky. I had spent the night dismantling the house of cards my son built on my name and my trust. Tomorrow would bring more desperate calls, more pleading messages, maybe even meetings with lawyers or the police. But in that moment, in the quiet of my kitchen, as a new day began, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The weight of being their safety net, their silent sponsor, their endless backup plan. It was gone. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. And it felt right. By the time I turned my phone back on the next afternoon, there were 17 missed calls, 23 texts, and 4 voicemails. Every single one from Eric and Vanessa. Their messages started off angry, then turned into begging, and finally into guilt trips. How could you do this to your own son? Eric texted at 3:17 a.m., we're going to miss our private tour of the Louvre. Vanessa complained at 7:42 a.m., a couple of hours later. Eric warned, the hotel is threatening to call the police if we don't pay. By 11:05 a.m., Vanessa sent one that really stung. Is this how you want to be remembered as a mother? That last one hit me hard. How did I want to be remembered? As a mom who kept covering up and cleaning up, or as a mom who loved her son enough to finally stop enabling him? Instead of replying, I called Grace, who had just gotten back from New Zealand. I told her how Eric and Vanessa had been blowing up my phone all day, and admitted, part of me wonders if I've gone too far. Grace didn't hesitate. Martha, what they did was financial abuse. This isn't about a missed dinner. They used you, manipulated you, and stole from you. I tried to protest, but they're stranded in Paris. Grace cut me off. Martha, they're grown adults in one of the most connected cities in the world. They have options, the embassy, friends, even pawning some of those designer bags Vanessa is always showing off online. I sighed, knowing she was right, but that motherly pull was still there. I've never stood firm with Eric before, I admitted. It feels unnatural. Grace's voice softened. Of course it does. You've spent his whole life putting his needs before your own. But Martha, you're not an ATM. And Eric, he needs the chance to fix his own mess. Later, I listened to Eric's latest voicemail. His tone was different this time, quieter, less arrogant. Mom, I don't know if you're listening. We found a cheaper hotel for tonight. The Amex office helped us book economy seats home using Vanessa's emergency card. We'll be back Thursday. I know you're angry, maybe for good reason. We need to talk. I replayed it twice, trying to decide if it was real remorse or just another trick. After years of excuses, I couldn't trust my gut when it came to Eric. The next morning, I sat across from Henry, my lawyer, as he looked over the evidence. Forged signatures, unauthorized credit cards, money transfers. You have every right to press charges, he said. The word criminal made me sick to my stomach. I don't want Eric in jail, I whispered. I just want him to understand and make things right. Henry leaned back. Then, we'll go another way. A legal repayment plan, financial counseling, strict rules, no court, unless he breaks the agreement. Relief washed over me. Even though Henry warned, be ready, Eric has a history of ignoring rules. I nodded. I know, but I have to try. On Thursday morning, I was pulling weeds in my garden when a taxi pulled up. Out stepped Eric and Vanessa, looking nothing like their glossy Instagram selves. The flashy luggage was gone, replaced by cheap duffel bags. Their confident, smug air had vanished too. I kept weeding until Eric called softly, Mom. I looked up, hand shading my eyes. Hello, Eric. He shifted awkwardly. Vanessa and we need to talk. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. Yes, come inside. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where I'd discovered their lies just days before. I poured water and studied them. They both looked worn down. Vanessa's perfect nails were chipped, her hair messy. Eric's face was rough with days of stubble. I raised an eyebrow. So, your flight wasn't first class? Eric gave a small, sheepish wince. No, middle seats. Last row. By the bathroom. I almost smiled. Humbling, I'm sure. Vanessa stayed silent, staring into her glass instead of firing back like she usually did. Mom, Eric began carefully. What happened in Paris? It didn't begin in Paris, I cut in. What happened there was just the result of choices you've been making for years. Eric nodded slowly, shame flickering in his eyes. I know, and we owe you an explanation. I think you owe me more than that, I said, keeping my voice steady. But go ahead, start explaining. Eric glanced at Vanessa before continuing. It started small, just a transfer here and there when we were short on rent, using your card for an emergency car repair. But it was so easy that his voice trailed off, as if he couldn't finish. You decided to just keep going. I finished for him, forging my signature on loans, opening credit accounts in my name, slowly draining the retirement savings your father spent decades building. Eric's cheeks turned red. Yes, and my birthday dinner. I pressed, the one you canceled to fly to Paris. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. That was my idea. We'd already booked the trip using the equity line on your house. We needed an excuse to leave town before you noticed the withdrawal. The cold calculation in her words stung. So my birthday was just bad timing for your theft. Neither of them argued. How much? I asked sharply. In total, how much have you taken from me? Eric lifted his head. His face was pained. Just over $160,000. The number sat between us like a stone. $160,000. More than 5 years of my teacher's salary. Money that was supposed to keep me secure in my later years. I've already spoken with my attorney, I said after a long silence. He's preparing a repayment agreement. You'll both sign it, acknowledging the debt and agreeing to strict terms for repayment. Mom, we can't possibly, Eric started. You'll also attend financial counseling, I continued, cutting him off. And you'll give me monthly records of every dollar you earn and spend. Every cent will be repaid. And if we refuse? Vanessa asked, her defiance sparking back to life. I met her eyes. Then I'll press criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. And the evidence is overwhelming, you know that as well as I do. Her face went pale. You wouldn't. I canceled your Paris vacation from my kitchen table in the middle of the night. I reminded her. Don't test me. Eric leaned forward, his hand hovering above the table, as if he wanted to reach for mine. Mom, we'll sign whatever you want, but we don't have that kind of money. You had it when you were spending it, I said firmly. You'll have it again once you stop living beyond your means and start paying back what you stole. But what about our apartment, our car payments? Eric's voice trembled with panic. Questions for your financial counselor, I said. But I imagine it means downsizing, selling the car, canceling the country club. Big changes are coming. Vanessa's head snapped up. That's not fair. We have a certain standard of living. Your friends aren't paying your bills. I cut her off. I'm not either. Not anymore. Eric gave her a sharp look before turning back to me. When do we sign? Henry is drawing up the papers. We'll meet at his office tomorrow at 10. I stood, signaling the conversation was over. Take the day to think about how you want to handle this. This is a turning point. As they got up to leave, Eric hesitated. Where are we supposed to go? We can't get into our apartment until the landlord calls us back. And we left some things in Paris as collateral. For a moment, my resolve wavered. They looked so small, so lost, nothing like the couple who flaunted champagne and designer luggage days ago. But then I remembered sitting alone at my birthday dinner while they toasted with money they'd stolen from me. There's a Holiday Inn just off the interstate, I said evenly. That's within your budget. After they left, I sat alone in the kitchen, my emotions battling each other. Had I been too harsh? Not harsh enough? Was I teaching Eric to grow up or just punishing him for hurting me? I didn't know. What I did know was that if things stayed the same, if I kept enabling them, it would destroy all of us. My phone buzzed with a text from Henry. Papers ready for tomorrow. You're doing the right thing, Martha. I hoped he was right, because, despite the betrayal and anger, one truth hadn't changed. I loved my son. And sometimes, loving someone means being strong enough to let them face the fallout from their choices, even when it hurts both of you. This is rock bottom, I whispered to myself. And the only way from rock bottom is up. The next morning, I arrived at Henry's office 15 minutes early, clutching my purse like it was the only thing holding me together, my stomach twisted with nerves. What if Eric and Vanessa didn't come? What if they brought their own lawyer to fight me? What if keeping my self-respect meant losing my son forever? Martha, Henry greeted me warmly, stepping out of his office. You look like you haven't slept. Is it that obvious? I tried to smile. I kept replaying yesterday in my head, wondering if I'm really doing the right thing. He guided me into his office and shut the door. Second thoughts are normal, but remember, this isn't about punishment. It's about repair. You're giving Eric the chance to make things right without the courts getting involved. I nodded, clinging to his reassurance. Have you heard from them? Before Henry could answer, his receptionist's voice came over the intercom. Mr. and Mrs. Campbell are here, sir. My heart leaped. They came. Eric and Vanessa walked in looking a little better than the day before. Clean clothes, washed faces, but the shadows under their eyes told the story of a long, sleepless week. Their shoulders sagged with tension. Thank you for coming, Henry said, motioning to the seats across from us. He set a thick folder on the table. Before we begin, I need to ask, have you spoken with an attorney? He directed the question to Eric and Vanessa. We can't afford one, Vanessa muttered. I see, Henry replied. I need to be clear. I represent Martha. These documents are prepared at her request. You have the right to get your own lawyer before signing. We understand, Eric said quickly. Let's just get this over with. Henry opened the folder and spoke calmly but firmly. This is a legally binding agreement. It acknowledges the debt of $163,457.82 to Martha Campbell. It requires repayment of $2,000 a month for 84 months, with a final balloon payment to cover the remaining balance. Interest is set at 3%, far lower than any commercial lender. Eric's eyes widened. $2,000 a month. That's impossible with what we make. That's why the agreement also requires financial counseling and lifestyle changes, Henry explained. Martha is being extremely generous here. She could demand the full amount immediately, which would likely bankrupt you both. Vanessa whispered to Eric, her voice cracking. We'll lose our apartment. That's likely, Henry said evenly. The counselor will help you find housing you can actually afford. Eric's voice trembled. What about my job? If the bank finds out, I could be fired. Fraud isn't something they overlook. The irony of his words hung in the air, but Henry didn't flinch. This agreement includes a confidentiality clause. Martha isn't interested in destroying your career, but criminal charges would become public record, and the charges are very real. As Henry laid out the details: monthly financial reports, no new credit lines, mandatory counseling. I watched Eric closely. Each condition seemed to chip away at him. The bravado, the entitlement, it was gone. Sitting across from me wasn't the spoiled man I'd been dealing with for years, but someone finally staring at the weight of his actions. There's one more document, Henry said, sliding a paper across the table. This concerns the home equity loan taken out against Martha's house. Eric, you'll need to sign this, transferring the full responsibility for that debt to you. Eric froze, staring at the page. That's another $50,000, I reminded him quietly. Money you borrowed against the roof over my head. If I sign all this, he said slowly, what happens next? You begin repaying your mother, Henry said. You work with the counselor to create a real budget. You rebuild trust by being transparent and consistent. And most importantly, you avoid going to prison for multiple felonies. Eric finally lifted his eyes to mine. And us, Mom, what happens to our relationship? The rawness in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment, the man sitting across from me wasn't the one who'd drained my savings. It was the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, the teenager who stumbled after his father died, the young man who once made me so proud at graduation. Somewhere beneath the lies and entitlement, I could still see the boy I once knew. That depends on you, I said honestly, on whether these signatures mean you're truly ready to change, or if this is just another way to avoid consequences. Eric held my gaze for a long time, then slowly nodded and picked up the pen. One by one, he and Vanessa signed each document. With every signature, I felt two things at once: relief that they were finally taking responsibility, and sadness that things had fallen so far that my own son now needed a contract to be held accountable. When the last paper was signed, Henry gathered the documents and stepped out to make copies, leaving the three of us in a heavy silence. What about the criminal charges? Vanessa asked, her voice tight. Are they gone now? As long as you follow the agreement, I said firmly. But if you break it, or touch my accounts again, I'll have no choice but to move forward legally. Eric rubbed his face. We're going to need help, Mom, not money, he added quickly when he saw my expression harden. But guidance. We don't know how to live differently. We've been doing this for so long. His honest ignorance, rather than defiance, softened something in me. That's why the agreement includes counseling, I told him. There are people who can teach you what I should have taught you years ago. What's that? He asked. That financial security doesn't come from pretending to be rich, I said, leaning forward. It comes from living within your means. Your father and I never had designer clothes or luxury trips. We saved, little by little. We invested carefully. We built stability, brick by brick. That's how real wealth is, made through patience and discipline, not credit cards and loans. Vanessa looked down at her expensive watch, almost certainly paid for with my money. I don't know if I can live like that, she murmured. Then you have choices to make, I said gently but firmly. Both of you do. Henry returned with the copies, and we wrapped up the meeting. The handshakes felt more like business than family, but it was done. As they reached the door, Eric hesitated. Mom, where do we go from here? Do we still talk? Do we see each other? The question pierced me. Even after everything, he still wanted reassurance that he hadn't lost me completely. We start small, I said after a pause. Maybe coffee next week, after your first counseling session. We'll talk about how it went. Relief flickered across his face. I'd like that. After they left, Henry sat back at his desk, looking satisfied. That went better than I expected. No last-minute outbursts, no refusals. They were surprisingly compliant, I admitted, though I wonder how long it will last. Once reality sets in. That's why the agreement has consequences, Henry reminded me. Then, more gently, but Martha, you should prepare yourself. Changing old habits is hard, especially for someone like Eric, who's never faced real consequences before. I know, I sighed, but I have to give him the chance. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The road ahead wouldn't be easy for any of us, but at least there was a road forward. Maybe, just maybe, my son could still grow into the man I always hoped he'd become. When I pulled into the driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to see a photo of a for rent sign, Vanessa's manicured hand giving a thumbs up in the corner. The caption read, "First appointment with the financial counselor set for Monday. Looking at affordable housing today. Thank you for the second chance." It was signed with both their names, though sent from Vanessa's phone. Was it a genuine first step or just another performance? Only time would tell. But as I stepped into my house, finally safe from their exploitation, I let myself feel a small, cautious hope. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that finally change us. And sometimes, it takes a ruined vacation to bring reality crashing down. When the bank notification popped up on my phone showing a $2,000 transfer from Eric's account to mine, I had to sit down. My chest felt tight, filled with relief, disbelief, and a cautious hope. They actually paid, I thought. Later that day, I told Grace over coffee. On time, the full amount. That's encouraging, she said, though I heard the careful warning in her voice. Have you spoken with them since the meeting at Henry's office? We had coffee after their first counseling session, I said, absently stirring my latte. It was awkward. Eric kept watching me, like he was waiting for me to yell at him, and Vanessa hardly said a word. What did you talk about? Grace asked. The counseling mostly. They're working with Dr. Marshallou. Remember her? The financial therapist from that retirement seminar last year. She has them tracking every penny they spend and writing down how they're feeling when they buy something. Grace nodded. That's smart. Makes them face the emotional side of it. Eric said it's been eye-opening. Turns out they were spending over $500 a month just on coffee shops and casual dining. And they found a smaller apartment half the rent of their luxury place. They're moving next weekend. I hesitated. They asked if I would help. Grace raised her eyebrows. And you said? I said I'd bring lunch, but no heavy lifting, I said with a wry smile. Small steps, right? Moving day came with crisp fall weather, clear skies, sunshine, perfect for a fresh start. I showed up at Eric and Vanessa's old apartment with bags of sandwiches and chips. This visit felt nothing like the others. Before, I'd be ushered in, shown the latest expensive purchase, and eventually cornered into writing a check for some emergency. Today, there was no performance. The place was a mess. Boxes everywhere. Expensive furniture, tagged with bright stickers sell keep, store. Mom, you came, Eric said, sounding genuinely surprised, even though we'd planned it. He was wearing old jeans and a faded t-shirt, clothes I hadn't seen him in 4 years. I said I would, I replied, holding up the lunch bags. Where should I put these? Kitchen counter's the only clear space, he said, leading me through the clutter. Vanessa's friend Jen is helping, and Tyler from my office brought his truck in the kitchen. Vanessa was carefully wrapping glasses in newspaper, her hair in a ponytail, face bare of makeup. She looked younger, more real. Martha, she said with a small nod. Thank you for lunch. You're welcome, I answered, setting down the food. How's the packing going? It's illuminating, she admitted. Do you know we have 17 wine glasses? 17 for 2 people who hardly ever entertain. I raised my eyebrows. That's a lot. Aspirational purchasing, she said with a faint smile. Dr. Marshall's term. We've been buying for the life we wanted people to think we had, not the life we actually lived. Before I could respond, a young woman appeared. I assumed, the consignment shop guy's here to see the furniture, she said. Vanessa left to meet him, and I found myself alone with Eric. This can't be easy for her, I said, watching Vanessa through the doorway as she talked to the dealer. It's not, Eric admitted, but she's trying. We both are. He unwrapped a sandwich and took a thoughtful bite before adding, Dr. Marshall says Vanessa's spending comes from deep insecurity. She grew up really poor, food stamps, secondhand clothes. Her whole sense of worth got tied to appearances. That startled me. In all the years I'd known her, Vanessa had never shared anything about her childhood. She always acted like she came from the same kind of middle-class, stable background as Eric and you. I asked softly, "What about your choices?" He thought for a moment. "Fear," he said finally. "Fear of letting people down, of not measuring up, of not being the son you and Dad deserved." The honesty stung. "So you handled that fear by stealing from me." Eric winced. "When you say it like that, I know it sounds terrible, but I convinced myself it was about maintaining the image of success. I thought that would make you proud. I thought the end justified the means." He paused, then looked me straight in the eye. "Now, I know it doesn't. Real success isn't about appearances." Eric set his sandwich down and looked at me seriously. "Mom, I've been offered a demotion at the bank." "What?" I blinked, caught off guard. "I thought the agreement protected your job." "It did from legal fallout," he said, "but I told my supervisor everything. The fraud, the theft, all of it. I couldn't keep pretending, not in a job that's all about financial trust." I just stared at him. That level of honesty was not what I expected. "It was terrifying," he admitted. "I almost threw up in his office. But Dr. Marshall said if we're going to rebuild, it has to be on truth. No more secrets. And they didn't fire you." "Surprisingly, no. They're moving me into operations. No clients, just back office work. Big pay cut, but I keep my benefits sound. I can still make the restitution payments." I studied him, really looked at him. This wasn't the cocky young man who once hopped on a plane to Paris using my money. His shoulders were lower, his eyes clearer, humbled, scared, yes, but also steady. "I'm proud of you for doing that," I said at last. I know it wasn't easy. Something flickered in his eyes. "Hope. Maybe, really you're not disappointed in your past actions." "Yes," I answered honestly. "But in the steps you're taking now, not at all." I reached across the counter and squeezed his hand briefly. "This is what growing up looks like, Eric, facing the consequences, making things right, and choosing honesty." Before he could respond, Tyler's voice rang from the other room, asking for help with a heavy cabinet. Eric slipped away, leaving me alone in the kitchen. My eyes drifted to the refrigerator. Pinned under a magnet was a handwritten budget, the kind I'd begged Eric to use back in college. Next to it, a chart tracking their debt biggest line item, the money owed to me. I felt so many things at once. Sadness at how far they'd fallen, anger that still burned, though softer now, but also, surprisingly, a spark of hope. Those plain sheets of paper meant more than any luxury purchase ever had. They weren't glamorous, but they were real. Later, as everyone gathered around the kitchen counter with their sandwiches, I watched them laugh and tease each other about the mountain of boxes still left to pack. They swapped stories about moving disasters and argued over which pizza joint near their new apartment was best. It was casual, easy, unpolished, and I realized I'd hardly ever seen them like this before. "We're having a little housewarming next month," Vanessa said suddenly, her voice hesitant. "Nothing fancy, just pizza and beer. Would you like to come, Martha?" Her invitation hung heavy in the air. The old Vanessa would have thrown a catered event with expensive wine and made me feel out of place. But this was different. A simple gathering in a modest apartment, a sign of change. "I'd like that," I said, meeting her gaze. "Thank you for inviting me." The afternoon stretched on, and I found myself doing more than just handing out sandwiches. I wrapped dishes, taped boxes, even helped Vanessa sort through her overflowing closet. "I can't believe I spent $300 on this blouse," she muttered, holding up a silk top with the tag still dangling. "I never even wore it." "Why'd you buy it?" I asked gently. She thought for a moment. "Because my yoga instructor had one. I thought if I dressed like her, I'd be like her, successful, put together." Shaking her head, she dropped it in the sell pile. "It sounds ridiculous now." "Not ridiculous," I corrected softly. "Just human. We all want to fit in, to feel worthy." She looked at me in surprise. "I thought you'd hate me after everything we did." I was angry, I admitted. Still am, some days. But hate, no. I've been a teacher too long to believe people can't change. Mistakes, especially big ones, are often the best teachers. Even ours, she asked quietly, especially yours. I folded a sweater and set it aside. "The question is, are you willing to learn the lesson?" By evening, the apartment was nearly bare, most of their belongings packed or tagged for consignment. As I slipped on my coat, Eric walked me out to my car. "Thanks for coming today," he said, hands shoved deep in his pockets like he used to when he was a nervous teenager. "It really meant a lot to me," I said, using the same word Vanessa had earlier. My son hesitated, then spoke carefully. Mom, I know it'll take time to earn back your trust, but I want you to know we're serious about fixing this, not just the money, but everything. As the streetlights flickered on, I looked at him. In the glow, I could see both the grown man he was becoming and the boy I used to know. He was far from perfect, but he was trying. One day at a time, I said, opening my car door. That's all any of us can do. Driving home, my thoughts wandered. The hurt was still there, and trust couldn't magically come back after one afternoon of packing boxes and eating sandwiches. But something had shifted. The wall of anger I'd built since that lonely birthday dinner felt a little weaker, like a crack had formed in it. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Eric. Thanks again for today. We couldn't have done it without you. Such a short message, but so different from the demanding, guilt-filled texts I used to get. Strangely enough, their ruined Paris vacation had done what years of my enabling never could. It forced them to start growing up. Small steps, yes, but finally in the right direction. 3 months later, I found myself in the community room of our local library, nervously arranging chairs in a circle. It was 6:45 p.m. Just 15 minutes before the very first meeting of a group I'd named Financial Boundaries. It was meant for parents, like me, who were still financially supporting their grown children. The idea had started as just a passing thought in therapy. I'd begun seeing someone to work through the pain of Eric's betrayal. Then, it became more real after I ran into Irene Sullivan at the grocery store. Her son's gambling addiction had nearly ruined her. By the time I told Grace about it, the idea had taken shape, and she immediately offered to help. Do you think anyone will show up? I asked Grace as she set out refreshments. She smiled. Martha, the library had to print more flyers because people kept taking them. You're not the only one going through this. She was right. By 7:05, every chair was filled. 15 parents, most in their 60s and 70s. Some looked anxious, some determined, but all of them wore the tired expression of people who had been carrying too much for too long. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Martha Campbell, and I started this group because 3 months ago, I found out my son and daughter-in-law had taken more than $160,000 from me through unauthorized transfers and fake credit applications. A ripple went through the room, not of surprise, but of recognition. The hardest part wasn't losing the money, I continued. It was realizing that by constantly bailing my son out, I had helped create the very problem I was facing. I had enabled him, and that hurt us both. Around the circle, heads nodded in agreement. This group is a place to share our stories, our struggles, and our strategies as we figure out how to love our adult children while still setting healthy financial boundaries. Who'd like to start? A man with silver hair raised his hand. I'm Howard. My daughter is 43 and has never once paid her own rent. My wife and I have refinanced our house twice to keep her afloat. Across the circle, a woman spoke up. I'm Patricia. My son is 38, living in my basement. He has a master's degree in engineering but can't keep a job for more than 6 months. I'm draining my retirement to pay his student loans, one by one. The stories poured out. Parents whose savings had been wiped out by failed business schemes, retirement plans put on hold, even grandchildren's college funds emptied to cover endless emergencies. The details were different, but the pattern was the same. Grown children who had never learned responsibility because their parents had always rescued them. How did you finally set boundaries? Patricia asked me. I've tried, but every time my son says he's depressed or threatens to move in with bad friends, I give in. I told them about Paris, about the night I canceled the credit cards, about the restitution agreement that followed. Some people looked shocked at my firmness, others nodded with respect. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. The hardest part for me, I admitted, was realizing that constantly bailing Eric out wasn't really helping him at all. If anything, I was stopping him from learning the skills and strength he needed to handle life as an adult. Has it worked? Howard asked, raising an eyebrow. Are they actually changing? It's a process, I answered honestly. There have been bumps. Just last month, they skipped a financial counseling session and even tried to hide it from me. But, I smiled a little, they've made every single payment on time. They're finally living within their means. And most importantly, they're starting to own their choices. I couldn't do what you did, an older woman named Ruth whispered. My daughter has 3 kids. If I stopped helping her with money, they'd suffer. That's a real worry, Grace said gently. But there's a difference between supporting your grandkids like helping with school or activities and enabling your daughter to stay financially dependent. The discussion went on for nearly 2 hours, way longer than planned. Nobody wanted to leave. For many, it was the first time they'd spoken openly without shame or judgment. By the end, people were trading phone numbers, sharing resources, and agreeing to meet every week instead of just once a month. As we stacked chairs after everyone left, Grace gave me a knowing smile. "You've started something important here, Martha." "I just gave people a space," I said, brushing it off. "The need was already there." "Don't underestimate yourself," she insisted. "It takes real courage to turn personal pain into community support." Driving home, her words lingered in my mind. How many parents were quietly drowning in the same struggles, believing they were the only ones? How many grown children were stuck in unhealthy cycles, never learning to stand on their own? My phone rang, breaking my thoughts. It was Eric. His voice came through the car speakers, tense. "Mom, do you have a minute?" My stomach tightened. Calls like this usually meant money. "I'm driving home," I said cautiously. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, well, sort of." He took a breath. "Remember how I told you about the promotion that might open up in operations if I kept up solid performance for 6 months? I remember. My supervisor called me in today. He said I've been doing exceptional work and they want to fast-track me. It comes with a big raise." "Eric, that's wonderful," I said, genuinely thrilled. "There's a catch," he admitted, tension slipping back into his voice. "The job requires a credit check, and with everything that happened, my credit is trashed. I'll fail and lose the opportunity." I sighed softly, finally seeing where this was headed. "And you're hoping I can help?" "Not with money," he said quickly. "I was wondering if you'd write a letter to HR, just to explain that I've taken responsibility, that I'm making regular payments, and that I've been fully compliant for 3 months. I thought about it. This wasn't him asking me to rescue him. This was him taking responsibility and asking for support in rebuilding. That was different. "I can do that," I said finally. "Send me the HR contact when you get it." Relief flooded his voice. "Thank you. Really, how was your evening? Didn't you have that new group meeting tonight?" I was touched, he remembered. "It went better than I ever expected. 15 people showed up." "I'm not surprised," Eric said. "What you went through with us, I bet a lot more people are living through the same thing than anyone admits." "That's exactly what we discovered," I agreed, pulling into the driveway. "Everyone thought they were alone." His voice softened, hesitant. "I'm proud of you for doing this, for taking something painful and using it to help others." His words caught me off guard. It had been years since he'd shown real interest in my life, or acknowledged my feelings. "Thank you, Eric," I said quietly. "That means a lot." After we hung up, I sat in the car for a moment, strangely moved. Small steps, I thought, but meaningful ones. When I finally went inside, I found an email waiting from the community college. Weeks ago, I'd reached out about possibly teaching a financial literacy workshop. Their response was enthusiastic. They wanted to meet about creating a 6-week course for the spring semester. As I got ready for bed, I realized something unexpected had grown out of the ashes of betrayal and disappointment. Purpose. Between the support group, the potential workshop, and even the shifting relationship with Eric and Vanessa, my life was slowly taking on new meaning. A few months earlier, I never would have imagined this new chapter of my life. Back then, I had sat alone at a restaurant on my birthday, feeling forgotten and empty. Tonight was different. My phone buzzed with one last text before bed. This one from Patricia, a woman in my support group. "Thank you for tonight. For the first time in years, I don't feel crazy or alone. See you next week." I smiled as I typed back, "You're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone." This is the start of real change for all of us. Setting the phone down, I felt a calm I hadn't known in months. Eric's betrayal still hurt, and rebuilding trust was slow. But something new was taking root, something healthier, stronger, and more real than the old patterns we had lived in for years. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about how sometimes the most painful experiences end up being the best teachers. Even a ruined vacation, I realized, can lead to a better life, not only for those who traveled, but for everyone touched by their journey. 6 months later, I woke to a message from Vanessa. "Could you meet us for coffee at Riverside Cafe at Isausha Sifendome? Important, but not an emergency. Let us know if another time works better." Her tone was polite, even thoughtful, so different from the demanding texts I used to get. Still, my stomach knotted with worry. What did important, but not emergency mean? Were they struggling with their repayment plan? thinking of moving away. Was someone sick? The cafe they chose was small and simple, close to their new apartment, far from the fancy coffee shops they once loved. When I walked in, Eric and Vanessa were already seated in the corner, a pot of tea and 3 cups waiting. Eric hugged me, something he rarely used to do, and said, "Thanks for coming, Mom." Vanessa smiled nervously and added, "We ordered Earl Grey. I remembered it's your favorite." I sat down, noticing how tense they looked, though not unhappy. "So," I asked gently, "what's this important matter we need to discuss?" They exchanged a quick look before Eric pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. "What's this?" I asked, hesitating to touch it. "Open it," Vanessa urged softly. Inside was a simple card with a watercolor cake on the front. Her handwriting filled the inside. "Dear Martha, 6 months ago, we made the worst choice of our lives when we picked a luxury vacation over celebrating your birthday. We can't undo the hurt, but we hope you'll accept this invitation for a proper birthday dinner. Belated, but heartfelt, with love and remorse, Eric and Vanessa." Attached was an invitation to Antonio's, the very restaurant where I had sat alone on my birthday. I looked up, honestly surprised. "We've been talking about it in counseling," Eric explained. "Dr. Marshall said, actions mean more than words. This is our way of trying to make amends, not just about the money," Vanessa added quietly, "but about the pain we caused you that night." I traced the card with my fingers, torn. Part of me wanted to brush it off, to remind them that no dinner could erase the memory of that lonely evening, but another part of me saw the sincerity in their faces, the effort behind this gesture. "We understand if you don't want to," Eric said quickly, mistaking my silence. "I'll come," I interrupted gently. "Thank you for the invitation." Relief spread across their faces. Then Vanessa reached into her purse and pulled out a small handmade notebook titled 6 Months of Growth. "We've been working on this together," she said, handing it to me. Inside were photos, journal entries, and financial records from their journey since Paris. The first page showed their new apartment, modest but neat and cozy. Another page displayed their monthly budget, with real numbers tracked against their goals. There were reflections from counseling, notes about what they'd learned, even a photo of Eric holding a certificate from his recent promotion. "The last 6 months have been the hardest of our lives," Eric admitted as I flipped through the pages, "but also the most life-changing." I paused on an entry written in Vanessa's handwriting. "Today, I realized I've been confusing money with love my whole life. As a child, my parents couldn't afford the things other kids had, so I felt unloved. As an adult, I spend money to feel worthy. Seeing this pattern is the first step to breaking it." Her honesty hit me in a way I didn't expect. "Dr. Marshall suggested we make this booklet," Vanessa explained, "to remind ourselves of how far we've come when we feel discouraged, which happens more often than we'd like to admit." Eric added with a wry smile, "Living within our means after years of excess feels like learning to walk again after floating your whole life." I kept turning the pages, each one more moving than the last. The final page held their repayment record. 6 straight months of $2,000, payments $12,000 already paid back. "We wanted you to have this," Eric said softly, "to show you that what happened in Paris, painful as it was, became the wake-up call we desperately needed." I felt tears prick my eyes and took a sip of tea to steady myself. "Thank you for sharing this with me," I said. "It clearly represents a lot of work and soul-searching." "We're not asking for forgiveness," Vanessa said gently. "We know rebuilding trust takes much longer than breaking it. We just wanted you to see that your choice to hold us accountable rather than rescuing us was the right one." Eric nodded. "The best gift you ever gave us was saying no to giving us money." We all felt the irony of that statement and shared a small, genuine smile, the first in longer than I could remember. As we talked more, they filled me in on their lives. Eric's promotion was going well. Vanessa had started teaching yoga at a community center instead of the exclusive studio she once dreamed of. Less money, but more meaning. They were even thinking about moving into a smaller apartment to pay off their debt faster. "We've also started volunteering at a youth financial literacy program," Eric added. "We're teaching teenagers the basic money skills we wish we had learned earlier." "That's wonderful," I said, truly impressed. "How did that come about?" "Actually, because of your support group," Vanessa admitted. "When Eric told me you were helping other parents set boundaries with financially dependent kids, it made me think about prevention. If teens learn about money early, maybe they won't end up like us." Her words touched me deeply. "And how's it going?" I asked. "Challenging, but rewarding," Eric said. These kids don't understand how credit or interest works, or how little expenses add up, but they're eager to learn, especially when we share our story. You tell them about everything, I asked, surprised. Not every detail, Vanessa said, but enough. How we got trapped in appearance-based spending, how we used money that wasn't ours, how it all collapsed. When we described being stranded in Paris after the credit cards were cut off, they're glued to every word. It's actually freeing, Eric added. Being honest about our mistakes with others has helped us accept them ourselves. As I listened, I realized I was seeing them differently. The shallow image they once clung to was gone. In its place was something real hard-won, wisdom and growth. We have one more thing to talk about, Eric said, his voice serious. It's about your birthday dinner this Saturday. Yes, Vanessa added, we've been saving for it. A little at a time, out of our budget. It won't be fancy, but it'll be fully paid for by us. No credit cards, no loans, no borrowed money. Just a simple, honest celebration. Eric leaned forward. We want to honor you properly, Mom, but in a way that's real for us. It won't be the fanciest wine or appetizers, but it will be ours. The sincerity on their faces touched me more than any luxury ever could. This wasn't about putting on a show. It was about love, gratitude, and real connection. That sounds perfect, I said, meaning every word. Driving home, I thought about what I'd just witnessed. The real gift wasn't the dinner invitation, or even the booklet. It was proof of true change. 6 months ago, I had been crushed by betrayal and boiling with anger. Now, I was watching them grow into people I could believe in again. I never thought I'd sit across from Eric and Vanessa and feel something like pride, but here I was cautiously proud of how far they'd come, of their honesty, of their willingness to start over. The road ahead was still long. They had 7 more years of payments left, and trust would take just as long to fully rebuild. But for the first time, I truly believed they might actually make it. That evening, as I packed for my weekly support group, I slipped their 6 months of growth booklet into my bag. With their permission, I planned to share it with the group as proof that change was possible. Not easy, not fast, and certainly not painless, but possible. Earlier that day, Howard, the father whose daughter had never paid her own rent, had texted me. Do you have any success stories to share? Some days I lose hope. Please tell me this tough love is worth it. Now, I had something real to show him. Not a fairy tale ending, but a glimpse of genuine growth and accountability. As I gathered my things, my phone buzzed with a reminder. Saturday, 7 p.m. birthday dinner at Antonia's. 6 months late, but maybe right on time in all the ways that mattered. The best gift wasn't the dinner itself, but the new people who would be sitting at the table with me, people learning, at last, how to give from a place of truth and substance, rather than appearance. The night of the dinner arrived with a gentle spring rain, the streets shining under the lamplight. I dressed with unusual care, not in the expensive blue dress I had worn to my lonely birthday dinner 6 months earlier, but in a simple emerald blouse I'd found at a consignment shop, paired with black trousers and my mother's pearl earrings, a touch of lipstick, a quick look in the mirror, and I was startled by the face staring back. Somehow, I looked younger. The hard lines around my mouth had softened. The constant worry that used to crease my forehead had faded. For the first time in years, I looked at peace. At exactly 7 o'clock, I stepped into Antonio's. The same maître d' who had seated me alone half a year ago, now greeted me politely. If he recognized me, his expression gave nothing away. Your party is already seated, he said, leading me to a window table overlooking the garden patio, a spot far lovelier than the one where I had once eaten in silence. Eric and Vanessa stood as I approached. They looked different too. Eric wore a plain button-down instead of his usual designer clothes. Vanessa's hair was styled simply, her makeup natural, her outfit elegant but understated. Mom, you look beautiful, Eric said, hugging me with genuine warmth. Happy belated birthday, Martha, Vanessa added, handing me a small bouquet of spring flowers. At the table, I noticed sparkling water in place of the pricey wine they once considered essential, and a single candle glowing softly in the center. We asked if we could do something special after dinner, Eric said, nodding toward the garden, weather permitting. I smiled, curious but willing to be surprised. As we opened our menus, Vanessa spoke with quiet confidence. We've budgeted for appetizers and entrees, she said with a small smile, but maybe we should share a dessert. Her openness about money, the very topic they once avoided with excuses and pretense, felt like another sign of growth. That sounds perfect, I said. We ordered thoughtfully, choosing meals we truly wanted rather than the most expensive dishes. Conversation flowed easily, almost naturally. We talked about the support group, which now had 20 steady members, and even a waiting list. Eric shared how one of his teenage students had finally grasped how credit cards work. Vanessa described a new yoga program she was creating for seniors on tight budgets. Not once did they hint at financial trouble, ask for help, or invent some urgent crisis that required me to step in. The old manipulative tension that used to hang over every conversation was gone. Instead, Eric leaned forward as we finished our meals and said, "We have something to show you." He pulled out his phone, opened a banking app, and slid it toward me. I squinted at the screen, unsure at first what I was looking at. The balance read $1,220. "What am I seeing?" I asked. "We call it the Future Security Fund," Vanessa explained. "After paying our bills, making our monthly payment to you, and covering basic living expenses, we put every extra dollar here. It's not much yet," Eric admitted, "but it grows a little every month. First, we want to build an emergency fund equal to 3 months of living expenses. After that, we'll start a retirement account." I was genuinely impressed. "That's a big step," I told them. Vanessa nodded. "Dr. Marshall says the hardest part of financial recovery isn't making a budget, it's believing in a future you can't see yet. This account is our way of believing in that future." We shared a slice of tiramisu for dessert, the same dessert I would have ordered on my real birthday had I not canceled the candle that night. Then Eric gave the waiter a nod. "We're ready for the garden now, if that's still possible." The waiter cleared our table and led us through the French doors onto the small patio. The rain had left the garden glistening, and strings of fairy lights twinkled in the damp leaves, turning the space into something magical. In the center stood a table with a birthday cake, candles waiting to be lit. "What's this?" I asked, startled. "The birthday you should have had," Eric said simply. "Cake, candles, and people who actually appreciate you." Vanessa stepped forward with a small wrapped gift. "It's not expensive," she said, "but it's from both of us. From our hearts, not our credit cards." My hands trembled slightly as I unwrapped the package. Inside was a wooden picture frame, handcrafted and rustic. Inside the frame was a photo I had never seen before. The three of us, at Christmas, years ago, laughing together at something silly. We looked happy, connected, real. "Where did you find this?" I asked, my throat tight. "In one of the boxes during our move," Eric explained. "It reminded us what we're working toward, not just paying off debt but rebuilding authentic connection." "The frame was made by a local artisan," Vanessa added softly. "He's a recovering gambling addict. Craftsmanship gave him purpose again." His story reminded us of ours. The thoughtfulness of the gift moved me in a way no luxury item ever had. For years they'd handed me expensive, impersonal presents bought on credit or worse, bought with money stolen from me. But this simple frame, chosen with love and intention, meant more than all of those combined. "It's perfect," I whispered. "Thank you." Eric lit the candles on the cake, exactly 65 of them, creating a blaze that made us all laugh. "Make a wish, Mom," he urged, looking at their faces, glowing in the candlelight faces, showing real care instead of manipulation. I realized I didn't need to wish for anything. What I would have wished for was already happening. I blew out the candles to their applause. Eric sliced the cake, a plain vanilla one with uneven frosting. "Did you make this?" I asked. Vanessa nodded, blushing. "My first time baking well, ever." The first one collapsed in the middle, so this is version 2. Her effort touched me deeply. She hadn't just bought something ready-made. She had tried, failed, and tried again. That spoke louder than words. The cake was sweet, imperfect, and delicious. Eric lifted his water glass, his voice unsteady with emotion. "To second chances and, to the woman who gave us one, even when we didn't deserve it. To growth," Vanessa added, "and to the painful lessons that make it possible." I raised my glass to 2 real celebrations. Whenever they happened to come, our glasses clinked together. And in that moment, something inside me loosened. The anger and betrayal that had shadowed me for months finally began to fade. Maybe it wasn't full forgiveness yet, but it was acceptance. Acceptance. That's what the evening left me with: acceptance of our imperfect journey, of the damage that had been done and the healing that had finally begun. I understood now that relationships, like financial recovery, aren't rebuilt in one dramatic moment. They grow back slowly, choice by choice, through small, steady acts of honesty and effort. Later, as Eric and Vanessa walked me to my car, the air cool and fresh after the rain, Eric hesitated. Was it okay? The celebration? More than okay, I assured him. It was genuine. That makes it more meaningful than any elaborate party ever could. Vanessa looked thoughtful. We've been talking about what happens after the debt is fully repaid, about 7 years from now, if we keep on track. I was surprised they were looking that far ahead. Eric nodded. We want to find a way to pay it forward, to help people who are where we once were, maybe set up a scholarship for financial literacy, or support a program that helps families break destructive money patterns. I was struck by how far their vision extended beyond themselves. That's remarkably forward-thinking, I said honestly. We've been forever changed by this, Vanessa replied softly. It only makes sense for the impact to carry on beyond us. Driving home with the framed photograph resting on the seat beside me, I thought about how far we had come since that painful birthday 6 months earlier. From betrayal to accountability, from entitlement to gratitude, from appearances to genuine connection. The work wasn't done. Trust was still fragile. The financial wounds would take years to heal, and I knew old habits might resurface under stress. But tonight had given me a glimpse of possibility, a hint of what our relationship could become if we stayed committed to honesty and change. Not perfect, but healthier. Not blind trust, but respect earned. Not lavish celebrations, but moments that mattered. As I parked in my driveway, I noticed a text from Grace. How was the dinner? I typed back one word: genuine. Her reply came almost instantly. The best birthday gift of all. And she was right. The most valuable gifts aren't expensive, they're the ones that show real care, effort, and change. My belated birthday celebration had given me exactly that. Not just a meal, but proof that Eric and Vanessa were becoming people I could truly be proud to call family. Are you nervous? Grace asked the next morning as we set up chairs in the community college lecture hall. A little, I admitted, fussing with the projector screen. Public speaking was never my strong suit, even when I taught high school English. You'll be wonderful, she said, arranging handouts on a side table. No one can speak more authentically about this than you. This was the culmination of a year-long journey that had begun with a lonely birthday dinner and a devastating discovery. Now, I was preparing to deliver the keynote address at the college's financial literacy conference, a full-day event with workshops, panels, and resource booths. My support group, now officially recognized as a nonprofit, even had its own table staffed by Howard and Patricia. Mom, we brought the visual aids, Eric called as he and Vanessa entered, arms full of poster boards showing the charts and graphs we'd created. Perfect timing, I smiled. The doors open in 20 minutes. As they set up the displays, I marveled at how different they looked from the couple who had jetted off to Paris with my stolen money a year ago. The flashy veneer was gone. In its place was quiet confidence. They dressed simply but neatly, carried themselves with dignity instead of pretense, and most importantly, lived within their means. The budget workshop materials are ready, Vanessa reported, handing me a folder. We've made 50 copies, but we can print more if we need to. And I confirmed the panel participants. Eric added, the financial counselor, the debt recovery specialist, and the elder law attorney are all here. I thanked them both, deeply moved. What had once been a court-ordered requirement had transformed into genuine passion. Now, they volunteered regularly with my support group and the youth literacy program, sharing their story openly as a warning and a source of hope. The past year hadn't been smooth. There were bumps along the way: unexpected car repair that drained their small emergency fund, a missed counseling session because of work conflicts, even a heated argument when Vanessa slipped back into old spending habits during a stressful week. But the difference was this: they didn't hide it. They faced the setbacks directly, without falling back into deception or irresponsibility. Most importantly, they never once missed a restitution payment. Month after month, 12 in a row, $2,000 each time. In 1 year, they had paid back $24,000, a solid beginning, on the 7-year plan we'd agreed to. As people began to file into the lecture hall, I took a deep breath and steadied myself. My talk was titled Breaking the Cycle: Setting Healthy Financial Boundaries with Adult Children. It combined my personal story with the hard-earned wisdom of our support group and the insights of financial therapists, counselors, and elder law specialists we'd consulted over the past year. At exactly 9 a.m., the community college's continuing education director introduced me. Nearly 200 people filled the room: parents, grandparents, financial professionals, community advocates. As I walked to the podium, I spotted Howard in the back row, giving me a thumbs up. Good morning, I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. 1 year ago today, I spent my 65th birthday alone in an Italian restaurant, while my son and daughter-in-law flew first class to Paris using money stolen from my accounts. A ripple went through the audience at my blunt honesty. That painful night, I continued, was the beginning of a journey I never expected, one that brought me here today to talk about financial boundaries, enabling behaviors, and the possibility of change. For the next 45 minutes, I told my story plainly. I spoke about the gradual erosion of boundaries that had led to Eric and Vanessa's dependence, the gut-wrenching discovery of their fraud, my decision to cut off their credit cards mid-vacation, and the long, hard process of rebuilding our relationship on accountability instead of enablement. The hardest lesson I learned, I told them, was that my so-called help was actually hurting my son. Every time I rescued him, I denied him the chance to build the strength and skills he needed as an adult. I laid out the practical steps we'd taken, the repayment agreement, the counseling, the monthly financial check-ins, but I emphasized that structure alone wasn't enough. Real change only happened because Eric and Vanessa chose to embrace the process instead of fighting it. I can't promise you a perfect solution, I admitted near the end. What worked for us may not work for you, but I can offer you this: permission to put your own financial security first, permission to set clear boundaries, and the reminder that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your adult children is let them experience the natural consequences of their choices. When I finished, the audience applauded warmly. Then I invited Eric and Vanessa to join me on stage for questions. Their presence, their willingness to answer honestly, gave weight to everything I had said. A woman raised her hand. "What was the turning point for you?" she asked Eric. "When did you finally realize something had to change?" He paused, then spoke carefully. "Honestly, it was when we were stranded in Paris. We went from the Ritz to a budget hotel, begging friends for help to get home. That was when I finally understood my mom's support wasn't endless. There were real consequences to my choices, and I couldn't keep living that way." Another hand went up. "What would you say to parents who are afraid that setting boundaries will destroy their relationship with their children?" Vanessa leaned into the microphone. "I'd say that enabling destructive behavior is what really destroys relationships. Boundaries may hurt in the short term, but they protect love in the long run. Our relationship with Martha is stronger now than it's ever been because she was brave enough to say no when it mattered most." When the program ended, we stayed for hours. We answered questions at the resource tables, sat on panel discussions, and connected people with counselors and services. Many parents approached me quietly, sometimes with tears in their eyes, to share their own stories of pain, hope, and boundaries tested. Parents who had mortgaged their homes to fund failing businesses. Grandparents raising grandchildren because their own children couldn't manage even the basics. Widows whose life insurance payouts had been drained by financially dependent family members. Story after story poured out at the conference. One woman clutched my hand and whispered, "You've given me courage. I've been afraid to set boundaries with my daughter for years, but hearing your story makes me believe it might help her." Not just me. By late afternoon, as the conference wound down, exhaustion hit me like a wave. I slipped into a quiet corner with a cup of tea Grace had brought me. "Quite a day," she said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed," I admitted, "but in a good way. When I sat alone at that birthday dinner a year ago, I never imagined my pain would one day help so many others." She smiled. "The best teachers are the ones who've lived what they teach. Your authenticity is what makes your message powerful." As we packed up, Eric appeared with an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a birthday card, signed by Eric, Vanessa, and every member of our support group. Beneath the signatures was an invitation: dinner at Antonio's that evening. "We thought it was fitting to come full circle," Eric explained. "To celebrate your birthday in the place where everything began. Everyone from the group will be there," Vanessa added softly. They wanted to honor the woman who helped them find their voices. Tears blurred my vision. That would be wonderful. Later, stepping into Antonio's for the third time in a year, I was met with warm applause. Howard, Patricia, a dozen others from the support group, and, of course, Eric and Vanessa waited at a long table. The Mater D, who had once watched me dine alone, smiled knowingly. "Happy birthday, Mrs. Campbell. It's good to see you with friends this year." As I took my seat at the head of the table, surrounded by people whose lives had intersected with mine through shared pain and healing, gratitude filled me. Howard raised his glass. "To Martha, who taught us that saying no can be the most loving word in the English language. To boundaries that heal." not walls that divide, Patricia added, and to the courage to learn from hard lessons when easy comfort would only keep us stuck, Eric concluded, his eyes steady on mine. The glasses clinked. I thought back to the lonely dinner that had started it all, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the resolve. That one night had set in motion a year of transformation, a thriving support group, a financial literacy program reaching hundreds, the repair of my relationship with Eric and Vanessa, and my own journey from enabling parent to empowered advocate. It had not been easy. The lessons were painful, the work relentless, but the outcome was richer than I could have imagined. I had learned that sometimes the greatest gift isn't shielding loved ones from hardship, but allowing them to grow through it. That the best celebrations aren't about luxury or perfection, but authenticity, and that even a ruined vacation can become the first step in a story of redemption. As I looked around the table at faces forever changed by the ripple effects of one hard choice, I knew with certainty this birthday, my 66th, was the most meaningful celebration of my life, not because it was lavish, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, and in the end, authenticity is the only gift that truly lasts. That's today's story. If it touched you, leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget, share your own life lesson in the comments below.